Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skill Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NIA and NJCAA to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 10-minute, 100-shot test can be taken for free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. How does culture drive performance?
I really believe that there's two parts to it. One part is the team culture that you have, and the other part of it is the program culture that you have. So in the team part, everybody's going to have a different role and a different responsibility that they're going to have to, accept to make the team the best that it can be. So the guy who starts, who makes, scores a lot of points and everything, well, they always view themselves as being, I'm a player, I'm somebody who the team relies on to do these things, and they kind of fit themselves into that box right away. Yeah. So I think their perspective of culture is them probably playing well and leading us in the point column. But what about the kid that doesn't play very much? What do they do? And that's where we have to find ways as coaches to make sure that the sweat equity that they put in, the time that they put in, they're noticed too. Mm-hmm. So blending all of those things together can be a difficult thing for coaches to do. But that team culture, they all have to know that they have value. And we've done it. We've made bench captains, and usually it's one guy every year. But I tell him that I know you're doing your job when the ref is telling you to sit down.
Love that.
Because you are so into the game, and you are, timeouts. You're out there giving high fives the first chance you get. When it's a great play, you're up waving the towel. Whatever it is, if you're in my way and I'm walking on the sidelines and I got to say, hey, sit down for a second, you're doing your job just right.
I've never heard that before. I've never heard of having a bench captain before, and somebody that is actively policing. I almost look at the bench as they're one organism over there, mm-hmm. that I have to help them, all of them together, which not that we don't do that, but having a guy and giving him value and giving him almost something to do in that way. This has been worth it, man. So appreciate your time. We'll see.
Yeah. well, that you hit it on the head. Is that they have to have value. And what does that player bring in terms of value to the team? And they go out and they work hard. They go out and they do everything that you've asked them to. They're getting the job done in the classroom, but they're not getting minutes on the floor because they don't have the same athleticism, or they don't have maybe the same skill level.
Life's not fair. Yeah.
And it isn't, but you still have value to this team. You are still somebody that is respected, and you're somebody that can bring something. And what if it's attitude, it's energy, it's being that team captain on the bench. And we've had guys really buy into it. I mean, I sit down with them and I talk to them about it, and I don't tell them what to do. I just say, this is something nobody else brings to our team. You can bring it. So if this is a role that you'll accept, it's not going to make you play more or play less. It's not going to make you a better scorer or worse scorer. It's just something you can offer every single game that nobody else can do like you do.
Yeah.
And we've had guys really buy into it. We've done the same thing with captains in the locker room. We've done things. And captain isn't the right word. I know I'm getting on a little side tangent here. It's leadership.
Yeah.
It's leadership. So can you lead from the bench? Can you lead in the locker room? Can you lead on the floor? And that's what we're looking for. And when we find guys who do it exceptional, then I make sure that they know they're valued for the leadership they bring in whatever area it might be. Your sixth man has got to have great value. Why aren't they a starter? Because you lift us up when you get in the game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. Now, to answer the other side of it, what does a program culture do for us? The program culture is the lifeblood of your program. I mean, I'm at a relatively small school, and I know everybody can put a different number on that. We have 750 kids in our high school. Okay, I get the kids that come out. We have a couple of kids maybe that we have to cut each year to get our numbers down to roughly 12. But it's kind of what you get. Now, I teach at a high school that has 1,800 kids. So I teach at a different school than where I coach.
Oh, wow.
And they might have 60, 70 kids who are coming out for the team. I mean, way different.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, for us, we started at the youth program. Our culture starts at the youth program. We start to teach them with having our players involved, what the attitude is like in the program, what the effort is like in the program. Our kids volunteer in doing camps and doing leagues and different things for our youth. The middle school level, we build it up a little bit more. And now we get to the freshman level, and you're doing the basics of what I'm doing at the varsity level. And the JV, you're jumping up a little bit more. In the JV, we tell them you're preparing to be a varsity player. So you've learned the basics last year. Now you need to start doing it with speed, with accuracy, with intensity, because the next jump, if you're not doing it at the JV level, the next jump is going to be too far for you to step in and compete. So we kind of map it out for the kids, but that whole thing, we want the elementary and the middle school kids to look to our varsity kids and be like, I want to be that someday.
Yeah.
I want to be the guy who gets to play on Friday night. Or in the girls program, I work great with our girls coach. He's a tremendous guy, and we have a lot of the same philosophy, and we do a lot of things together. And he's the same way. You want those young ladies looking up saying, I want to be like her.
Yeah.
And I think that when you do that, the kids want to be a part of the program. They want to get out in the park and play. They want to get in the driveway and play. They want to come to open gyms. And I probably hit on one of the other questions, but I want kids who want to be a part of things. And so we're going to build a culture that says, this is fun, this is exciting, this is where I want to be.
I love the culture that you're talking about, especially some of those words that you're using. Like, there's nothing wrong with basketball being fun.
Right.
And sometimes we allow success, our egos, other or ulterior motives, to zap the fun right out of the game.
Oh, for sure.
The continuity that you're talking about, especially with your terminology and probably your style of play from junior high up through high school, I think that's really important. And I don't want to skip over that. Having those kids learning what it means. What's your mascot?
We're the Bulldogs.
Yeah. What does it mean to play Bulldog basketball? It's kind of funny you said that. I grew up in Pennsylvania in a small town called Berwick, Pennsylvania, and we were the Bulldogs there. I grew up going to Berwick basketball camp and wanted to be a Bulldog. So when you say that, it's just a little special. But tell me, what are some things that you're doing to even help with your coaches? Because I've seen some programs where they all believe the same culture, but playing styles and teaching is drastically different from team to team.
I've really been blessed. I spent 9 years at the community college level, and then I have been in Otsego. Just finished my 6th season, and since both places, I had a great coaching staff. But when you jump to the high school side of things, it's different because they also have their own team while they're a part of the bigger program. So this year, my freshman coach, he played for me my first year in Otsego. So he went to college, graduated. He's now teaching at our middle school, and he jumped back in the program as a coach. Absolutely phenomenal to have somebody who has been in the program come back and coach for us.
Yeah.
So that helps in a big way. Now, it's unique. His dad is my JV coach, and he's been with me for 4 years now, I believe it is. He's finished his 4th year.
So those guys know the program pretty well.
Oh, they do. They know it. I value their opinion. We have the conversation that I want your ideas, I want your feedback, but ultimately, please understand that I have to make the final decision. Now, I give them a lot of leeway. I'm not telling you who to start on your team. I'm not telling you who gets the most minutes on your team. I have a philosophy that at the freshman level, the players deserve to get in the game, especially in the first half, I'd say, of the season.
I like that.
They need to get in the game more equally. It doesn't have to be equal, but give them a chance to go out there and enjoy what they can do. Towards the second half of the season, or maybe it's a rivalry game or something where it's a little bit more on the line, then the playing time is dispersed a little bit differently. That's part of competition and wanting to win. So that's a freshman level. The JV level is a little bit different. We want the kids to start to realize that not everybody has the same role. Not everybody has the same opportunity. And a lot of it depends on things like your skill, your athleticism, your work ethic, your attitude, more so than the freshman level. It's jumped up a little bit. And then at the varsity level, I start with my players beginning of every year, and we do kind of like a heads up, 7-up thing where I haven't put their heads on the table, and I say, guys, I want to win, you want to win. We know that. Okay. Now, what I want to know from you is, you all want to play. I can play you all equal minutes if you'd like to, and we'll see where the things fall. I'm okay with that. You all work hard. You're going to be great, teammates to each other. You're going to have good attitudes. I know that from what I've seen so far. How many of you want to play equal minutes, and we'll just see how it works? And nobody's hand ever goes up. And then I say, all right, the flip side of that is I can play you the best way I know how. And I will substitute you at the appropriate time and give certain guys more minutes than others, because I think that's what's going to lead us to a victory and be competitive every night on the floor. If you want our team to be competitive every night and you trust me enough to do that, go ahead and raise your hand. And everybody raises their hand. So I start right away and let the guys know this. You're voting. If I had a team that said equal minutes, I would play them equal minutes.
Wow.
I mean, if they
wanted, you're willing to do that.
I am super comfortable with that. We had a team a few years ago that we only had 10 kids on the team. We subbed 5 for 5. They all didn't play equal, but pretty close. But I had 10 guys that were very similar to each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This year, I had a team of 7, 8 guys that could really get on the floor and do some stuff for us. And I had a group that wasn't quite ready yet. So their minutes were not dispersed the same. So just in my own evaluating the team, every year is different. But I want those players to know up front that this can go one of two ways. And if you're voting that you want me to sub people so that we're competitive and we have the best chance at winning, that means that we're going to have to sacrifice. And I can't tell you who it is, but we'll have to sacrifice.
I really like that way of getting their input and finding out kind of where they're at, but without, like, there's not a lot of peer pressure involved with a game like that because it's anonymous. Right. Like no one else will know what you feel and what you think, because you don't want to be the guy that sits there and says, "Hey, raise your hand if you want equal minutes," and doesn't raise his hand. You look like a punk.
Right.
Or if you say, if you want us to win, and the kid doesn't raise, so you give them a safe way to kind of share. It helps you to know where they're at. My question is with playing time, you mentioned your freshman JV level and kind of some of the policies you have there. How do you articulate that with your parents? Is that something, because I think some coaches only talk about playing time with their players.
Sure. And
they're hoping that their players go home and share that philosophy with their parents. And we know as teachers that can get lost.
Two sides to that. And this goes back to your original question about, developing the coaches and how you do that. Is my freshman and JV coach are tremendous. They do a weekly email to the parents and to the players on Sunday nights. It's something that our JV coach started and worked really well. So it's not anything that I said you had to do this. He's been a teacher for 25 years, and he's a 5th grade teacher, and he's just like, these are things that we need to do to make sure that we can enjoy this season. Everybody can. So he started doing it. It's been phenomenal. They map out, like, they'll say, these are our starters for the game. These are the 2 or the 3 first subs based on what I've seen in practice. They also say, this is what we've worked on in practice this week. And based on what I've seen in these areas, some players are going to get more playing time. And that may mean we're not winning the game, but we worked on offensive rebounding, let's say. And a player did a great job in practice. He's doing a great job in the game, but the score isn't where we need it because scoring necessarily isn't his thing. Well, that was our focus for the week. So they usually give 2 or 3 focuses for practices. And then they say, I want you to know, this is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking at who the leading scorer was. I'm not looking at all these other things that you might be looking at in the stands. I'm looking at what we focused on in practice, because my coaches have the mindset that we're building for the varsity level. And that it's tremendous that we want to win. All of us do. But we want to make sure that our players are put in a position so when it counts the most, and that's when on the varsity floor, they have the best opportunity to win. All right. So that's kind of how they do it, and it works great. Now, how I do it is slightly different because I want our players, and you saw in the mission and the vision statement that I sent out to you, communication is a huge thing for us. And players, you have to be able to communicate effectively with me and with your parents. So I could tell them everything I'm going to tell you, or this is a jump up in being a varsity basketball player. You need to be able to communicate with them as well. So we'll go over something, and give you another example. I used the analogy of a cancer and how a cancerous cell grows and eventually can kind of take over, in a person's body. And that can happen in a team as well. One person can act as a cancer and they don't like something, so they go complain to the person sitting next to them in the locker room. And by that person sitting there not saying anything, that means you're telling the person complaining you agree.
Yeah.
So your answer needs to be, hey, you need to talk to coach about it, or you need to say, I don't have any control over what you're doing. I understand what you're saying, but there's only one person who can help you with this, depending on what the subject
Sure.
matter is. But if you sit there in silence, then they're taking it as agreement. Now we've got two people. So our cancer grew. And now those two people can go and get a third and a fourth. And eventually you've created a division amongst the team. And we don't want that. Same thing can happen when we go home. You take something that you didn't like home with you and you just complained about it, or your parents take something that they didn't like and they're kind of putting it on you. And now you've got to figure out what to do. And that's a more delicate situation. But if they truly don't like something, you don't have control over your playing time. The coach does. So you need to come talk to the coach. Your parent can come in and talk to the coach. But you need to communicate that to them. You all voted that you wanted me to sub you the best way possible so that we can compete and have a chance at winning. You need to go home tonight and say, hey, coach had us vote today. We all voted that we're going to try to win every game. That means some guys aren't going to play as much as others. And that's what you need to communicate. So when we go to the meeting, they're not blindsided
Sure.
by this information. And I honestly don't have a lot of parent meetings. I know some programs really do. We do have them from time to time. But when I think it's important for a player to communicate with their parent, I tell them that this is what I want you to do tonight. I need you to go home. And then at the end of practice, I'll remind them, go home and tell your parent, this is what we talked about. Or coach said I'm not playing because of this. Yeah. They need to know that. And I'm not going to say it works perfect, but I'm trying to grow them as young men. And those are conversations they need to learn to have.
Yeah, I love what you said about, talking about playing time with your players and help shaping that conversation and encouraging them to have that conversation when they go home. I was at a public school for 6 years before coming to Grapevine Faith, which is a private school. And at McKinney, I was younger. I had the philosophy of, listen, you don't have a right to talk about playing time. Parents, we're not going to discuss it. Players, I may discuss it with you, but parents, listen, if you come in and talk with me about your son, I'm all for it, but it's not going to be about that. And we know that every conversation, it's not about playing time. It gets back
it's
around
about
to
playing
it.
time. Yeah.
And so, but then I came to Faith where these kids pay to be here. And also I think maturing and listening to smarter coaches than me, I opened that up to, listen, if you guys want to talk about playing time, my door is open. Mm-hmm. I'd like for you both to be there, the parent and the player, to make sure that all of us are on the same page with it. But, it's amazing how opening that door, I really haven't had that many playing time conversations over the years. But, and I had a coach a few days ago that I talked to, gave a great, as a teacher, we will never tell a parent, I'll talk to you about your kid all day long, but I'm not going to talk to you about his grades. I'm not going to do that. Like, they would look at you like, what? Like, you can't do that. It's the same thing. And I feel like, I think a lot of coaches have gotten to the point now where they're past that old school of, hey, listen, playing time, true, you don't have control over it, but again, you do with some of your habits and the way that you handle yourself as a player. But we do need to be able to have those open conversations, just like we do with grades.
Yeah, the players certainly can influence their playing time.
Right.
and the coach has to decide to put them in or not, but they certainly have some influence in what goes on. And I tell in our parent meeting in the beginning of the year, I have a reason for everything I do. And if you want to know my reason, then we can set up a time to sit down. Just understand that my reason, you may not be in agreement with it.
Right.
So it might be, I'll give you a great example. I had a parent meeting one time with a parent came in and said, my son's averaging this many points, this many assists, this many rebounds. And they had, they're top on the team in these areas. And I said, that might be true. But what I'm looking at in our stats, and stats are great. I'm not an expert in that by any means, but I look at a few things. What's your son's turnover percentage? Okay, when they're involved in a play, that's important to me to know. Okay, what is we use the VPS score, so your value point score. What is their VPS score? All the good things divided by the bad things. That's the number one stat that I look at. So when a player comes up and say, "How many points do I have, coach?" I'll tell them, "I don't know." But your VPS score was a 1.2, which is really good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not looking at we're looking at apples and oranges. We're not comparing apples and apples. Points are important, assists are important, rebounds are important. But in the grand scheme of things, when we put that VPS score together, we also find out how many fouls did you have? How many turnovers did you have? How many missed shots did you have? That gives me a clearer picture of what you did in your time in the game. And a parent, you're not going to have that because it'd just be too much to calculate during the game. So I'm always open to it. The first 2 years, I did not allow parents to do the playing time thing either. And then I actually just got thinking, I don't know what it was, but thinking about it, saying, every parent meeting I have is about playing time. And I know why they're not playing.
Yeah.
But since I opened that up, I think I've had less parent meetings.
Yeah. And I think those conversations are not just helpful to give clarity to the player and the parent. I think they're also good markers for us. Like, do we really know why we're doing the things that we're doing? Because some of the best moments I feel like I've had is when I've told a parent, you know what, last game, I made a mistake. Like, I don't really have a good reason why I didn't play him. That in that moment, the group I had, I don't think it's bad to allow them behind the scenes a little bit and to see the fact that we do struggle and we are trying to do our very, very best, but golly, we don't expect perfection out of our players. Right. To expect perfection out of me or our coaches, that's tough. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.